All right, let's dive into one of the biggest challenges in software development. We're going to talk about how you build these massive, complex systems that can actually grow and change over time without, just collapsing into a complete and utter mess. We're going to unpack the core design tools that bring some serious order to all that potential chaos. Okay, let's get into it. So, yeah, let's just start with that huge question right there. Just picture a project, not with 10 classes, but with hundreds, maybe even thousands of them, all interacting. How on earth do you make sure that every new feature, every new piece you add, slots in perfectly without breaking everything else? Because let's be real, when you're working at that kind of scale, having a solid structure isn't just a nice little best practice. No, it's absolutely essential. It's about survival. And this is exactly where the principles of object-oriented design become your best friends, giving us the patterns we need to build software that's not just powerful, but also stable and maintainable. The biggest hurdle, of course, is just the sheer scale of it all. As a system gets bigger, it gets exponentially harder to keep everything consistent, to make sure everyone is following the same patterns across the entire code base. I mean, think about it. Without some kind of shared blueprint, every developer on the team might build their piece just a little bit differently. And all those tiny inconsistencies, they add up, and they create a really fragile system. So what we desperately need is a way to enforce a common structure, a template, that makes sure every new piece of the puzzle actually fits. And that brings us perfectly to our very first tool, the abstract class. This is our master blueprint. It's a way for us to define a standard structure that other, more specific classes are forced to follow. Now, the key thing to get about an abstract class is that it kind of has a split personality. On one hand, it can give you some ready-to-use, fully functional code. But on the other hand, it can also leave certain parts intentionally blank. It basically says, hey, any class that wants to be based on me has to fill in these specific details themselves. A perfect way to think about this is the concept of a vehicle. You can't just go out and build a vehicle, right? It's too generic. It's an abstract idea. But it works as a fantastic blueprint for creating very specific, very real things like a car or a truck. And both of those would inherit the common things that all vehicles have, like having a speed and carrying passengers. So here is the most crucial point, the main distinction. An abstract class is the blueprint. A concrete class is the actual finished product you build from that blueprint. You use the blueprint to guide how you build the house, but you live in the actual house. One's a template, the other's a real, tangible thing. And this right here just brilliantly drives that point home. Trying to create an object directly from an abstract class, from the blueprint, is like trying to drive the piece of paper with the car design on it. It just doesn't work. The system is going to yell at you with an error because the blueprint itself isn't a finished object. Okay, so we've got our blueprints. Awesome. But what happens when the different things we build from that blueprint need to behave in their own, totally unique ways? Well, let's move on to our next key concept and see how this all connects. Polymorphism. The word polymorphism sounds a little intimidating, but it's really not. It literally comes from Greek words meaning many forms. And in programming, it is an incredibly powerful idea. It means we can use the exact same command, like, say, accelerate, and get completely different results depending on whether we're talking to a sports car or a huge delivery truck. This makes our system so much more flexible and reusable. Let's make this even simpler. Just think about the English word open. You can open a door. That involves a handle, a latch, hinges. You can open a window, which might slide up or crank out. And you can open a bank account, which is just a series of financial transactions. See? The action has the same name, but what's actually happening behind the scenes is wildly different. That's polymorphism right there in the real world. So how do we actually pull this off in our code? Well, the mechanism for it is called method overriding. This is where a subclass, let's say our Ferrari class, takes a method like accelera that it got from its parent caro class, and it basically says, you know what, thanks, but my version of accelerating is going to be a lot different. It provides its own special, souped-up version of that exact same method. Now hang on, it's super easy to get this confused with another term that sounds almost identical, overloading. Let's just quickly clear this up. Look at the slide. On the left, with overriding, you see a child class changing a method it got from its parent. It's a relationship between two different classes. But on the right, with overloading, everything is happening inside a single class. You have methods with the same name, but they just do different things based on the kind of data you give them. One is about inheritance, the other is about variety within the same class. So let's go back to our cars. The basic Caro class has a standard Acelera method, but then an Uno subclass comes along and overrides it to be, pretty gentle. Then a Ferrari subclass overrides that very same method to give you whiplash-inducing acceleration. It's one name, but two totally different behaviors. That's the power of overriding. And this is where things get really, really cool. We can create a variable of type animal, a very general type, but we can have it hold a very specific object, like a cavallo or horse. And here's the magic. When we tell that generic animal to move, the system is smart. It knows it's actually a horse under the hood, so it will use the specific gallop method that we wrote just for the cavallo. This kind of flexibility is just a cornerstone of great object-oriented design. So, we have our blueprints, and we have our flexible parts that can behave differently. But what happens when a single class needs to follow the rules from multiple, completely unrelated blueprints at the same time? This is a really common and pretty tricky problem. Let's just imagine a classic scenario. Say you have a class for a DVD burner, and it has a method called burn. Makes sense. You also have a class for a CD burner, and guess what? It also has a method called burn. Now, you want to make a new combo drive class that can do both. The logical thing might seem to be to have it inherit from both of those parent classes. But that's where we hit a major snag. Exactly. When you tell your new combo drive to burn something, which version of the method should it use? The DVD one? The CD one? The system has no idea. This ambiguity, it's often called the diamond problem, and it's precisely why many programming languages just straight up don't let a class inherit from more than one parent. So, how do we get around this? The solution is our third tool, the interface. Now, an interface is not a blueprint, it's a contract. Think of it like a list of promises. It's a set of rules that says any class that wants to sign this contract must have these specific abilities. It defines what a class has to be able to do, but it says absolutely nothing about how it should do it. And here are the rules of the game that make this work. A class can still only inherit from one parent class, which solves our ambiguity problem. But that same class can implement, or sign contracts with, as many interfaces as it wants. It can promise to be burnable and printable and serializable all at the same time, as long as it fulfills the requirements of each one of those contracts. Okay, so we've covered abstract classes as our blueprints, polymorphism as our tool for flexibility, and interfaces as our binding contracts. The final, and maybe most important piece of the puzzle, is knowing when to reach for each one. So here's a really good rule of thumb. Use an abstract class when you have a strong is-a relationship. A car is a vehicle. It's all about a shared family identity and maybe providing some default common behavior. You use an interface when you have a can-do relationship. A DVD burner can burn, but so can a CD burner. It's about having a shared capability, even if the classes themselves aren't related at all. So we've laid it all out. We have the blueprints for creating a shared structure, we have the flexible, polymorphic parts for allowing unique behavior, and we have the contracts for guaranteeing a set of capabilities. The real question now is, how are you going to combine these tools to design your next system to make sure that it's not only stable and solid today, but that it's ready for all the growth and change that's coming tomorrow?